Hello, everyone, and welcome to SCORE Fairfield County's live webinar on Tell Me a Story, How to Focus the Narrative of You and Your Business. I'm Bob Hogan, the webinar coordinator today and a business mentor here at SCORE Fairfield County. I'm going to be your host, and our presenter is Merrill Loechner. More on Merrill in just a minute. But first of all, this webinar is being done in collaboration with the Monroe Chamber of Commerce and the Edith Wheeler Memorial Library. In that regard, I'd like to invite Beth Stoller from the Monroe Chamber to also give some brief introductory remarks. Beth? Okay, it doesn't look like, oh, can you unmute Beth, please?
Can you hear me now?
I can, thank you.
Excellent, sorry. Hi, everybody. On behalf of the Monroe Chamber, the Edith Wheeler Memorial Library, and SCORE, I'd like to welcome you to today's Lunch and Learn. For over 4 years, we three organizations have come together to bring you great business topics to help you learn and grow as business professionals. If there's a topic that you're interested that you haven't heard about, please let me know. I want to remind you that we have 2 upcoming events after this one. Monday, August 2nd, we will have Marianne Croce, who's going to be talking about the operator to business owner's mind shift. And on Thursday, September 9th, we will have a marketing gentleman, John Dupree from Calibrate Marketing, here to talk to us about what's happening this year in marketing. So we are working hard to bring you excellent business topics to help you every day in your business. I want to welcome Merrill. I know that we're all in for a wonderful presentation. Merrill has done other presentations for us. Her points are always very meaningful, and she always gives actionable tips for everybody to go away with. So I know that I'm going to walk away from this webinar re-energized and feeling ready to do something that Merrill shared with us. So without further ado, Bob, I'll turn this back over to you so we can get to Merrill. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Beth. Now just some brief information on SCORE. SCORE is a nonprofit national partner of the SBA, and locally here at SCORE Fairfield County, we have over 130 volunteers with a wide range of industry, process, and subject matter expertise. And we offer 3 primary value-added services to small business owners. First of all, we offer free one-on-one counseling, and you can do that by face-to-face now, or video, telephone, email. And you can access that by using the bit.ly link that you see on the screen, or you can go to our website and hit the Request a Mentor button. Secondly, we offer a wide range of educational workshops and webinars like the one today, roughly about 150 throughout the year. And lastly, we have extensive resources on our website, including access to subject matter experts. Our next live webinar will be next Wednesday, July the 7th at noon, and the topic is Why Good Isn't Good Enough, with Diane Winston presenting. And this is the 7th in our series to assist women and minority-owned businesses. And again, you can find more specifics on our website, fairfieldcounty.score.org. And if you're on our website, you'll also be able to access a large number of archived webinars on a wide range of business topics as well. So just some useful logistics and some information today about the webinar. We have set aside time for questions, and Merrill will take those at the end. However, you can ask a question at any time by clicking on the Q&A button, which is located at the bottom of your screen. Our webinar will end sharply at 1 o'clock to respect your time, and it's being recorded, and a link to the recording will be available on our website, fairfieldcounty.score.org, within the next couple of days. It's now my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Merrill Loechner. Merrill has been working in marketing and business development for over 3 decades. After obtaining her degree in communications, she worked with lawyers, scientists, and engineers across the world, from small technology startups to multinational corporations. Merrill is now an independent marketing consultant and podcast producer, helping small and growing companies find their voice and tell their stories. A published author since she was 9, she loves to coach her clients on the power of storytelling to differentiate themselves in crowded and clamorous markets. Merrill, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, everyone. Pleasure to meet you all. What I'm going to start on is a specific hypothesis. In 2009, 2 gentlemen named Joshua Glenn and Rob Walker came up with a hypothesis that narrative transforms insignificant objects into significant ones. And this is how they tested that hypothesis. They started what was called the Significant Object Project. And they went out to every garage sale, flea market, Goodwill store, and began buying tchotchke, doodahs, gimgahs, dust collectors, and whatever the hell that pink thing is. What they did then is take 100 of these objects and reached out to 100 writers and asked them to write something, a story about each one of these objects. And once they had 100 objects and 100 stories, they posted them for auction on eBay. In total, they spent $128.74 on all 100 objects. All 100 objects sold for a total of $3,612.51, including this thing, bought for $1, sold for $104.50. So this was the conclusion of the Significant Objects Project. Stories are such a powerful driver of emotional value that their effect on any given object's subjective value can actually be measured objectively. Short, sweet, straight to the point, a good story means you can charge more. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to talk about a little bit about the neuroscience of storytelling. Why do stories work so much on humans? Then we'll be talking how to develop your own stories, turning your stories into a pitch, where to tell your stories, and then I'll share some examples that I've worked on with my clients over the years. So, and then finally a Q&A. So let's get around to how our brains deal with stories. There's an absolutely extraordinary TED Talk by Yuri Hansen called This Is Your Brain on Communication. I highly recommend that. And what he was doing was looking at speaker listening neurocoupling, which primarily means what does your brain look like when you're listening to someone talk? And if you're listening to a lecture, you're listening to something kind of boring. The only part of your brain that's working at that point is the language processing center. So it's understanding what it's listening. It understands the vocabulary, but it's not particularly engaged. However, when you say something interesting, engaging, when you tell a story, the whole brain lights up. And that's very important there because the more part of your brain is active, the more part of memory is active. So not only people are listening and engaged to what they're hearing, they're going to remember it. This is really, really important if you're trying to explain a story to someone. There are certain neurochemicals in your brain that you want to trigger and some that you don't. We're going to go over the stuff that you want to trigger. So when you're interested and engaged, you release dopamine. It's generated by the hypothalamus, and it makes people feel alert, engaged, and happy. And most importantly, it also increases memory. So when you're laughing at something, when you're listening to a really funny story or a really great video, your body is being flooded with dopamine. You feel fun, you feel engaged, and you're going to remember what you're listening to. The second drug you need to take care of is oxytocin. It's also generated in the hypothalamus, and this is the empathy hormone. This is the one that you cry over Folgers coffee commercials, or when someone talks about dropping their phone, you immediately wince because you can imagine how you would feel if that happened. And again, both of those drugs in your brain immediately do memory. Now, there's some neurochemistry you don't want to trigger. And I see this happening a lot at networking. When someone walks up to you and say, "Hi, I sell insurance," boom, that's epinephrine. That's triggered by the amygdala. That triggers a flight or fight response. And it's a bit like, the red alert on Starship Enterprise. There's all those alarms going, danger, danger, danger. Because when you go up to someone and say, "I sell pretty much anything," there's a part of the lizard part of your brain going, "This person wants my money. They want to steal my money. Oh my God, I'm being mugged." So if you're ever in a live networking group and you see someone doing hard selling, you will see people taking that step back. It's because their body is being flooded with epinephrine. This is how you don't want people to react when you're telling a story about your business. So let's get to brass tacks here. Let's talk about developing your story. What does a good story do? It informs and educates. It entertains. It doesn't have to be funny, but it has to be engaging. You have to get people's attention. And also, again, a good story sticks. People will remember it. Okay, so how are you going to develop your story? Comes in a number of ways. You're going to define your core message. You're going to define your audience. Who are you going to tell this message to? And then you're going to define the shape or how you're going to tell that story. So, what is your core message? Why are you in business? What service or product do you offer? Why is what you offer valuable? Why is anyone going to give you money for it? What makes you different from what others offer? What's your differentiator? Pretty much, who are you? What do you do? Why should I care? And if any of you are starting in business, you probably need to speak to a SCORE mentor about your business plan, because your business plan is going to be answering all these questions. Who are you? What are you doing? Why should anyone care? And why should anyone pay you to do what you want to do? So once you have that basic core message, you have to figure out who you're going to tell that message to. Who wants your product or service? Why? What needs do they have that you can meet? What questions do they have that you can answer? Again, competition. Why should they choose you over anybody else doing what you do? And this is very important. I'll go over this later. What voice do they speak in? Because it's very easy to get so caught up in the jargon of your own industry that you forget that your potential clients may not be speaking that same language. This is what we call a buying persona, and you can have several of them. Most people are concerned when they're putting up a story, but I can do all these things for all these different people. You have to have a separate story for each of those buying personas. That's very important because you have to meet them at their level, not the level that you're comfortable at. And then we're going to talk about the shape of the story. There are straight line stories, there are circles, there are squirrels, and then what we call the dramatic curve or the narrative arc. So a straight line story is just that. It has a beginning and a middle, and it stops. They rarely just end. It's the beginning and a middle and a middle and a middle and a middle, and it just kind of fades off. If you've ever been to a really boring lecture, or like I said, if you've gone to live networking events, it's the 30-second elevator pitch. This is who I am. This is what I do. Give me money. Thank you. Call me. It's no one's going to remember that. And I'm going to give an example of a elevator pitch that I heard at one of my networking events. And this is Mary's story. My name is Mary, and I'm a personal injury attorney. I deal with slip and falls and car accidents and med mal. I fight hard for my clients. If you've sustained injuries due to an accident caused by another party, you have the right to pursue compensation for your damages. Give me a call. And if you're a networking group, you'll smile and nod and, oh, yeah, okay. Another personal injury attorney. Yeah, that's nice. And 3 hours later, you were not going to remember what Mary said. And there's a good chance you will not remember Mary at all. So instead, we're going to look at the hero's journey. A hero begins an adventure. They go through the journey. There's mistakes, failures, battles, mentors, successes, experiences. And at the end, the hero returns with wisdom to share. This is pure entertainment. This is the story of Star Wars. This is the story of the Lord of the Rings. This is very, very ingrained into Western culture as a form of storytelling. It is highly effective for information and engagement too, because it not only triggers the entertainment side, it also triggers the engagement and the empathic side. So let's hear Mary's story when she tells her story. When I was in my 20s, I was walking across the street and got hit by a drunk driver. I was told I was never going to walk again. And on top of that, I had such a horrible experience with my lawyer that I swore when I got out of that chair, I was going to go to law school. And I did. That was 15 years ago. I'm Mary and I'm a personal injury attorney now, and I've been where my clients are and I fight like hell for them. Guess what? You are going to remember that story. You followed along, you followed the circle. She's been through hell, she's back, and she's ready to help and mentor anyone else going through that hell. It's an interesting story. It triggers engagement, it triggers empathy, and you are going to remember her. Now, I'm going to introduce you to a story shape that I unfortunately did for years. Welcome to the Squirrel. This is the ultimate info dumpers. If you ever speaking to someone who has so much they want to tell you and tries telling you all of it simultaneously, these are the squirrels. And I, yes, am a squirrel in remission. I will have to catch myself going into a more structured narrative as opposed to trying to info dump everything at you at the same time. Again, I worked for 30 years with scientists, engineers, lawyers, computer people, absolutely brilliant people who kind of got a little overwhelmed when they were trying to explain what they were doing. So they would squirrel all over the place. And I'm sorry, but no one's informed, engaged, or educated by those kind of wandering narratives. I'm going to introduce you to Tom. He's a cybersecurity expert. And I was actually lucky enough to have his first 30-minute chat, 30-second bit recorded. And so I was actually able to translate exactly what he said. This was Tom's pitch. Do you know how important NYDFS Service 23 NCYR 500 is? 10 years ago, when I was working in a law firm, we suddenly had to deal with the feds telling us we'd been hacked. It was a big law firm, too. But now insurance companies have to follow guidelines for keeping their data safe. And crypto mining is a big thing now. Did you know Atlanta got hit with a big ransomware attack? That's a story. And don't forget, if you have PII for an EU citizen, you have to abide by the GDPR regulations. My name is Tom, and I'm a VCISO. Now, if you're like anybody else in that room, you're staring wide-eyed and going either, what the hell, or, oh, that's nice. Poor Tom had all this really good information to share with you, and no one understood a word of it. So let's talk about the dramatic curve. And I would say about 85 to 90% of all stories in Western culture follow a dramatic arc. It's the slow beginning and then suddenly drama, conflict, and then it resolves in a happy ever after. You will find this almost in 90% of all entertainment stories. But it's so ingrained in Western culture that it's also highly effective for both information and engagement. It's a very good for a business story because it has a beginning, a very specific message, and a successful ending. So let's bring back Tom. And now we put his pitch into a dramatic curve. My name's Tom, and I help companies keep their data safe. What would you do if the feds showed up at your job and said your entire computer system had been hacked? That happened to me 10 years ago at a large law firm I was working at. I was put in charge of completely revamping the firm's data security to make sure it could never happen again. Since then, I've dedicated my career to fighting hackers and keeping them away from sensitive data. If you're worried about keeping your data safe, let me help you keep the hackers out. So even if you don't understand all the computer jargon, you'll remember Tom as the guy who keeps the hackers out. And again, dramatic curve, interesting things happen, positive resolution, and you're going to remember Tom and his story. So, okay, you've got your story. How do you turn your story into a pitch? Well, here's the thing not a lot of people realize. You need at least 4 different styles of sales pitches. You're going to need an educational pitch, a persuasion pitch, a closer pitch, and a carrier pitch. So, the educational pitch. This is what you're doing when you offer something that needs explanation. It's new, unique, unusual. I'm a podcast producer. About 80% of people know what a podcast is now, but there are still people when I say I'm a podcast producer, they'll look at me and go, oh, what's a podcast? So I need to have my educational pitch ready to explain what I do and what a podcast is. For your educational pitches, this is pure education. You're trying to teach, you're not trying to sell anything. You're trying to educate. I'm Dr. Mary Comfort, a vet who loves cats. My kitten had a case of the 2 a.m. zoomies and it kept us both awake all night. So I invented a vibrating cat bed that purrs at the same frequency of a mother cat. So now my kitten and I get a full night's sleep. Notice there was no sales pitch. There's like, oh, for only $19.95 you can get. This is who I am. I'm offering something unique. This is why I did it. So that's a good example of an educational pitch. Then you have the persuasion pitch. This is when someone knows what you're doing, but they're not quite sure if they need you or not. This is still the teaching phase, but again, this is not explaining what the service is, but why it's useful. You want not only content here, but you want to put it in context that the person you're speaking to goes, oh, I get it now. Her neighbors laughed when my mom bought flood insurance. They live miles from the ocean. Then Superstorm Sandy hit. The winds were so strong they pushed the duck pond across the street into the first floor of all their homes. Mom was the only one whose losses were covered. I'm Ted from Allstate. So there's a really interesting story. That was also what we kind of call the negative arc. It's not the here's a great things happy ever out after. It's here's what's happened if you don't listen to me. So there's a little bit of an implied threat there, which still makes it interesting. And now we know Ted sells insurance without him going up to you and saying, hi, I'm Ted, I sell insurance. Then you have the closer pitch. This is someone who knows what you do, knows why you do it, but isn't necessarily sold on why they want to buy it from you. And this is where you bring out your differentiators. So you're a real estate agent. There is 8 million real estate agents. Why do I want to do business with you? Unlike other real estate agents who just list your house and call it a day, I create entire social media campaigns that target just the right buyers. I was able to get my last client's house sold in 48 hours for 20% over asking price, which, nowadays isn't a big deal, but back in the day, that was really impressive. And finally, what you also need is what we call a carrier pitch. This is what you should do if you go to networking events, because no one's going to remember your 30-second pitch. You want to go short, sweet, straight to the point. I'm Merrill. I can teach you how to do a podcast, or I can do all the work, and you just show up and talk. People can remember 2 sentences. They're not going to remember 30 seconds, 30 minutes, or the like. So one of the things when you're developing your pitches, have a really short, punchy, memorable one that you can share at networking events. So when people are being introduced to 35 people, they can still remember you. Okay, you're going into a networking event. I do this. Do you have to explain what you do? If you do, that's when you put in the educational pitch. If you don't, are they interested? Do they want to know more? You can start with a closer pitch. If you're a real estate agent and someone says, oh, wow, that's amazing. My wife just got a call this morning. She's getting this raise and this upgrade, and we have to move to the other side of the country. We're going to have to sell the house. This is when you do the closer pitch, because someone is interested in who you are and what you do. They just have to be convinced that you're the right person to do it. Or maybe, we were kind of thinking of moving to Florida, but is now really the best time? This is when you bring out your persuasion pitch. If they're not interested at all, but maybe they know someone who is, that's your carrier pitch. This is why carrier pitches are so important. You're going to be meeting and speaking with thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people in your business career. You want to be able to have other people spread your story to their network. And that's where carrier pitches comes so much in useful, because it's easy to take that and carry it from network to network to network. And if no one's interested in you, smile, thank you, and move on. Okay, you've got your story. You got your audience, you've got your different kinds of pitches. Now what? Let's talk about places you can tell your story. You can do video clips. These are for short form. These are no more than 1 or 2 minutes. When people are watching video, it's kind of weird. There's this weird time lag where they'll either only watch 1 or 2 minutes or like binge watch 13 hours of Game of Thrones. So when you're doing videos together, try to keep them short, succinct, and you can do live or recorded and target a very specific subject. You want them to remember one thing. So you don't want to say this. They'll maybe remember 2 out of the 5 you talk about. Talk about one thing. It will make it easier to remember. And these are great for educational pitches. Also, high engagement. Networking, again, great place for carrier pitches. Try to spread the story of who you are and what you do to as many as people as possible, not only through that network, but through that network's network. You have social media. Again, you don't want to write a lot of long stuff on social media because people are usually on their phone and scrolling, and no one's going to want to read Gone with the Wind on their phone. And another good thing about social media, you can target to your buying personas, especially when you're doing things like Facebook ads. And I'll be showing a few examples of that in a bit later. Long form storytelling. This is where you want to use a lot of words. Magazine, you can do LinkedIn articles, blog posts, books. This is where you can cover everything you do chapter by chapter. And this is a great way for people who are interested that are actually looking for more details to get those details. If you're a good storyteller verbally, you may want to do some public speaking. You want to talk at libraries and communities, do webinars like this one, teach classes, do corporate presentations. I'm a podcast producer. Be a guest on somebody's podcast. Start producing your own podcast. One of my pitches for the podcast that I produce is your elevator pitch is 30 seconds. What would you say if I gave you 30 minutes? So now we're going to do some examples of some of the things I've been talking about. Voice of the customer. This is, again, talking to the customer in a language that they understand best, especially if you're doing something complex. One of my customers was an managed IT guy, and he was trying to get more business. And so he sent me his story and I was looking. His story was great for IT savvy companies, people who already had computers, people who were already well versed in what managed IT was. The language, however, wouldn't have worked for mom and pop shops, which he also wanted to reach. So this is how we reworked some things to a voice of the customer. So he had timely resolution of problems upon recognition of symptoms. Okay, or we can simply say something breaks, we come and fix it. Proactive monitoring, optimization, and problem solving of workstations and servers. Or we keep an eye on your hardware and network to prevent things from breaking in the first place. An integral plan for ensuring continuity of business in the event of hardware failure and mitigation for data loss. If there's a catastrophic loss, we can get you back on your feet quickly. Web, email, infrastructure for communications internally with customers, CRM, etc. We can help you with website hosting, email setup, customer databases, and more. So what he did is we ended up writing several buying personas. We had the IT savvy company buying persona. We had kind of a mid-level one that was kind of a mix between the two. And then we had the small retail mom and pop shop. And he ended up with triple the amount of leads he had because the people in the mom and pop shop finally understood, oh, this is what he's offering, and this is where the value is. I don't know what a timely resolution of recognition of symptoms is. I want to know if my computer breaks, you can fix it. So especially if you're in an industry with its own jargon, again, if you're in computers, if you are a law firm, lawyers tend to do this all the time. They speak in that legalese jargon, and a lot of their people who are looking for information just get completely lost. You always have to speak in a language that the customer will understand. Okay, I'm going to introduce you to my buddy Tom again, our cybersecurity guy. Remember when he was talking about New York DFS cybersecurity regulation? He decided he really wanted to tell that story clearly. So what we did is we recorded a podcast episode for him. And in that podcast, what he did is he concentrated on this one thing. There is a law in New York State. It affects law firms. If a law firm gets hacked, absolutely epically, catastrophically bad things will happen to that law firm if New York State doesn't think it was following the regulations. So we put together a half an hour podcast with me coaching him not to get too technical because he wanted CEOs and managing partners to listen to this voice of the customer. So we had to make sure he pulled back the techiness a bit. Once we had that podcast up, we put it out on iTunes, we put it on Google Play, it went through all the podcasting places, we put it up on YouTube. What he did then is he went looking for his audience. So he went to LinkedIn groups and found all the groups that were run by legal IT people, large law firms, even medium-sized law firms. And he posted a note there saying, "Did you know about this law in New York State? Listen to my podcast, because if you don't know about this law, your firm could be in big trouble." 24 hours after he did that, he got this slightly frantic call from an AmLaw 100 law firm in Manhattan going, "We think we need you." 24 hours after that meeting, he ended up with a six-figure contract. That was 2 years ago. That podcast is still generating interest, still generating sales. He's at $500,000 in revenue from that one podcast episode, that one story. He got another call 2 weeks ago. So good content like this is evergreen, and make sure people can find it. So the next story is selling my own condo. I used to live up in Connecticut. I moved back down to Long Island to help take care of an elderly parent. And this was several years ago when it was a lot harder to sell something. So, what my real estate agent and I decided to do was two things. Normally, they'll do these videos of just like this kind of like walkthrough, but the videos I saw didn't have any context to it. They didn't say what I was looking at. So, I'm going to show a quick video here and let's see if we can get this to work.
High on a hill overlooking beautiful downtown Bethel is one of Connecticut's best kept secrets. During construction, the original owner of 10 Kingswood changed the blueprints, creating a one-of-a-kind townhome. On the first level, you will find a one-car garage, utilities room, laundry area, and a bright and spacious guest suite that is perfect as a second bedroom or private home office. On the next level, enjoy a large open living space with wood-burning fireplace and 9-foot ceilings. Currently designed as a formal library, this area can easily be transformed into a formal dining and entertaining space. The spacious eat-in kitchen offers plenty of counter and cabinet space, perfect for an active cook or baker. You can then step out onto the private back deck and enjoy year-round views of nature. But it is the third level that makes 10 Kingswood so extraordinary. This unique master suite contains a 16 by 28-foot master bedroom with vaulted ceilings and skylights, complete with 4 large closets, as well as stunning mountain views. The 18 by 13-foot master bath comes with a huge soaker tub, walk-in shower, large vanity, and even a bidet. You will find nothing else like it for the price. For more information and to set up a private showing.
The main reason we did that is my old townhouse, like you saw in the video, had a bedroom on the 3rd floor and a bedroom on the 1st floor, which wasn't great for families. And it had 2 flights of stairs, which wasn't great for retired people. So we had to build a story around this townhouse to get the right market. Whoops. There we go. So what we did a series of targeted Facebook ads. So one of them was luxury living for one. And one of the things you can do with Facebook is to target age, income, location. We also targeted Book Lovers Paradise. Your dream townhouse is now available. Finally, enough space for all your books in a town with 4 independent bookstores. Because I wasn't only selling the physical townhouse, I was selling the ambiance around it, including the town. We also did international feel in a small town America. We were next to large international corporations, and so we targeted this ad in Europe, Asia, and India. Then we did Queer Eye for the small town guy because it was a very friendly, gay friendly, small New England town. We also did a foodie's retreat because Bethel, where I used to live, had some fantastic restaurants. And then we also did the perfect getaway condo in the country for New York City commuters. And that was the ad that triggered it. It was seen by a couple in New York City who wasn't even thinking about moving until they saw the ad, looked at the video and went, wow, that sounds great. And in 48 hours, I had sold the townhouse for over 20% asking price. So here are some of the takeaways to go through. You need to define your core message of your business. This is your value proposition, and the mentors at SCORE could be there to help you figure out what your core message is. Define your audience, develop your buying personas, and you can have multiple of them. Again, if you're a real estate agent, you're going to have a very different message for the first time home buyer versus the flipper versus the person who's looking to downsize. So figure out who are all the people who could be interested in who you are and what you do, and develop messages for each individual persona. And then figure out how you want to tell that story. Are you on the hero's journey? Have you gone through something heroic and now you want to share that? A lot of people who are coaches and health coaches and the like use that kind of story. And then use that story and that audience to develop your pitches. There's no such thing having your 1 30-second elevator pitch. You have to have at least 4 different kinds of stories. And then you take those 4 different kinds of pitches and you have customize it to your different buying personas. It sounds like a lot, but the value is there. There are multiple ways to get your story out: one-to-one, online, posting, advertising, talking. What way is the best way to get to the audience that you're trying to reach? And finally, be your own significant object. You have a really good story. You are unique, you are interesting, you are engaging, you're informative, you're funny, and let your story add to your value. And I will be happy to take any questions now.
That's great. Thanks, Merrill. We will now use the rest of our time for Q&A, and we'll take as many as we can up until the top of the hour. So again, if you would like to ask Merrill a question, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and you can type it in there, and we'll take as many as we can. Our first one, Merrill, is from Michael. And the question is, what if you sell intangible products like Medicare insurance?
That's still a very, you tell the story of the why. Why do I need Medicare insurance? What is it about? What happens if I don't have it? I actually work with someone who does Medicare insurance, and he does what we call the negative arc. It's just this is what happens if you don't have Medicare insurance. And I'm the hero who can get it for you. So again, that is going to be a lot of education and possibly on the persuasion side, because a lot of people don't know what Medicare insurance is. So that's where you get to do the educational part of it and putting in, and this is why it's so important. You never want to go up and say, you need this. You explain the education and you automatically assume that the person listening to you will get why it's so important. And that's one of the things you'll have to work on when putting your story together.
Great. Thanks, Merrill. Maybe while we're taking some of the questions, if you could put your last slide up with your contact information, we've had a request to see that again.
Oh, absolutely. And I will actually put my contact information in the chat as well, so you can contact me directly if you need to.
Okay, that's great. Our next question is from Christine. How many audiences can a website address? Should the website attempt to reach multiple buying personas?
Oh, absolutely. That's what's called landing pages. And if you, each buying persona has its own landing page. A few years ago, I was driving in between Connecticut and New York, and I got a speeding ticket in Tarrytown, New York. And while I was thinking whether I wanted to fight this ticket, I went online and said, I got a speeding ticket in Tarrytown, New York. And the first thing that popped up on Google was, did you get a speeding ticket in Tarrytown, New York? Why, yes, I did. So I clicked on the link, and there was a traffic lawyer. That was his Tarrytown page. If you got a ticket in Tarrytown, New York, this is the judge, this is the courthouse, this is where you park, and this is how I have helped people get out of parking tickets in Tarrytown, New York. And I looked at his website. He had that kind of page for every single town in Westchester County. And not only is that wow, but also the SEO on his website shot through the roof because that was the exact information that specific people were looking for. So absolutely, make sure you have targeted information for every possible buying persona you have, each on their own landing page. And you can use those landing pages as well as landing pages for external ads, for when talking to someone like, oh, you're interested in this, visit my landing page here. And there's just the information they're looking for without having to digging through the rest of your website.
Great, good example, good advice there. We have another one question here is, this is great and very informative, but it takes a lot of time and effort to actually do all this. There are lots of different aspects to consider. For a small business, startup, or worse, a solopreneur, it's very time, mind, and resource consuming. Any advice in that regard?
Hire people like me to help you or go to SCORE. Literally, I had the same problem when I first started Smith Douglas. I spent 30 years in corporate America. And when I decided to start my own business, I went up to SCORE and said, okay, I got the marketing stuff down cold. I don't know anything else. I know nothing about operations or finance or LLC or legal. And yeah, I spent like 3 weeks almost constantly with my SCORE mentor, building my marketing plan, building the business plan. So yeah, use SCORE. They will help you a lot with this. But honestly, there's a lot you're going to have to do yourself because no one ever said being an entrepreneur is easy. It's hard work. I have a few mentees myself, and I always tell them, start your own business every day is a Monday.
Okay, great. Just a quick follow-up from this person. If I'm not familiar with how to post podcasts or landing pages, is that something that you do?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Your next question is from D. I am creating a persona for my fashion brand because I don't want it to be about me. What would be a good way to go with telling that story? I think it should be about the persona.
Yes and no. It also should be about you because that may be your only differentiator. There are a lot of fashion sites out there. There are a lot of fashion blogs out there. What makes you different? And if you can't think of anything that makes you different, guess what? It's you. So you actually have to also put your own persona there. What you want to do with your buying persona is what personas are people like us buy products like this. So I have a niece who actually has a fashion line and a fashion blog and Instagram and the like. And so she built up her own persona and it's like, if you're like me, you're going to like the stuff that I like too. And so not only does her brand have fans, but so does she. So you're going to have to, you can't step away from the persona, especially if you're a solopreneur. You are your brand.
That's great. Very good. Just again, another follow-up on your question. Can you please expand your answer on how to organize the landing pages in the context of having one website?
You can have one basic website and there's usually a drop-down menu. And so you can either break it down that way, or I know some people don't even attach their landing pages to their main website. They use them as their own kind of individual websites specifically for marketing. So they leave their primary website as a basic information and then use the landing pages as kind of part of a targeted marketing campaign. Or it could be embedded into your website and you have a download, we're saying markets reached. So I'm selling veterinary products. So there's a drop down menu, stuff for cats, stuff for dogs, stuff for guinea pigs, stuff for pigeons, whatever. Again, people like to know that you're an expert in something. So if you ever go to a law website, you'll see these are the parts of the law that we deal with. You go to the really big one, there's like 35 of them there, but you click on it and they'll create a landing page like, this is our traffic court site. This is our divorce law site. So you want to try to target it as much as possible. Then again, if you only do divorce law, you may want to break it down to, okay, same-sex couples or divorcing with a lot of kids. View the different kinds of, again, personas that you deal with, and then break it down for the landing pages.
Okay, that's great. Well, lots of good advice there. We had an earlier question. I know there's an attendee who is a nonprofit, and could you maybe make some comments on how you might apply what the principles you put on storytelling to a nonprofit organization?
All of them. A nonprofit is still a business. The only difference is they don't get to keep the money. That's the only difference between a for-profit and a nonprofit. I work with a lot of nonprofits, and primarily, especially if you are raising money for a charity or the like, you have to figure out 1,000 ways to say, you have money, can I have some? Without ever saying that. And so again, it's the storytelling, and especially with nonprofits, that's where all the empathy comes in. I mean, who can forget all those Sarah McLachlan ASPCA things of the poor starving puppy with the sad music in the background, and like, unless you give us money, he'll die. It's a lot of nonprofit stuff is actually very, very much based on empathy, but you also need the information to back it up. People don't want to feel like they're being taken advantage of, but again, all of those are still very, very important. You still have buying personas when a nonprofit or a charity. You're going to speak very different to the rich old matriarch of an old money family, which is going to be different from a 20-something internet millionaire versus the third in the line of Sir Something's the Thirds versus a group of people who just want to help. Those are all going to have different stories. Those are all going to have different language.
That's great. Okay, just a reminder to people, if we still have time for lots of time for questions. If you'd like to ask a question, please type it in using the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen. And our next question is, do you have advice on the parameters of a good Facebook ad? I know targeting, but wording and timing.
You have about 2 seconds on a Facebook ad to get people's attention. So it's funny because I came into storytelling from fiction writing. And the thing with fiction writing is you kind of like start with teasers and then you eventually get to the message. Then I got into corporate America and realized you can't do it that way. You have to pretend to be a journalist. You have to tell everything you want to say in the first sentence and then slowly back it up with the data. And on a Facebook ad, all you have is that one sentence. So that's when you have to kind of put that key in there saying this, that. And if people go, ooh, that feels like me, or that rings a bell, then they're going to click on it. And the thing with Facebook ads, you don't just have one. You're constantly experimenting and tweaking and, okay, I'm going to run these 3. Okay, which one's getting the most clicks? Okay, let's kill the other 2. Let's tweak the language and go again. Okay, this one's got more. Let's kill those. It's a constant flux. I always tell people marketing plans are never carved in stone. They're written on Etch-a-Sketches. It's what works, double down. Doesn't work, move on.
That's great. We've had, again, a couple of requests for your email information. So if you could put that last slide up, I think people would appreciate it, Merrill.
Okay, well, if they can see the chat, it's available for copy and paste right on the chat, but I can also share that screen.
Yeah. And maybe just while we're doing that, just and we do have time for more questions. So if you'd like to ask a question, please use that feature. Maybe while we're waiting for a couple more questions, Merrill, can you comment about when to use video and when not? Your video that you had there of selling your condo was very effective, and obviously and very successful for you. So when would you recommend people use video in their story and when not?
Well, if you have a visual story to tell, I have people coming to me asking about podcasts. And podcasts are great for some businesses and not so great for others. If you're a lawyer, podcasts are fantastic because lawyers love to talk and they have a lot of things to share with. If you're a chef, on the other hand, unless you're talking about the vagaries of the restaurant business, no one wants to hear about your food. They want to see it. The same thing, if you're an artist, no one wants to hear about how you paint. They want to see your paintings. So, how visual is your product? How visual is what your story is? Because again, what's a lawyer going to do in a video? So, check out this sexy new contract I wrote up. If you've got a visual story to tell, definitely use video. If you have a purely educational story to tell, then audio is a great way to go.
Okay, that's great. We just going here. Our next question would be from. Just let's make sure we get. Okay. How would you use podcasts or blogs in the context of having a website? What's the center of the wheel of having all of these targeted advertising angles, and how would you organize the tech aspect?
Have a really good webmaster. That's what I do. Have a webmaster who understands the business behind a website as opposed to just making something look pretty. One of the things you should know about having a lot of content on your website, Google loves that. Oh, Google loves having a busy website, especially if you're updating it constantly. If you want really good SEO, have a blog. Post something minimum once a week. Another thing is when I do podcasts for my clients, I make sure that they're also available on YouTube. Even if it's an audio only podcast, I'll have what's called an audiogram, which is a still image with some sound waves going on it. And then we post them on my client's website because Google owns YouTube. So any YouTube links on your website immediately ups your SEO. So the more information you can have on there, podcasts, videos, blogs, anything. Again, you have lots of landing pages. Google loves that because look at all that glorious content. So that's something that you always want to have a lot on the website, but make it, again, easily searchable. It's really easy to info dump on your website. So you'll need to work with your web designer and developer to make sure it's not just all on the front page. It's easy to find the information that people are looking for.
Okay. Our next question is around LinkedIn. We've talked about Facebook, but if your audience is not Facebook but LinkedIn, is there any specific advice in that regard?
Oh, absolutely. I'm pure B2B. I only use LinkedIn for, friends, family, and some genealogical research. I live 24/7 in LinkedIn. There is a lot of ways in there. The thing you have to realize that people in LinkedIn don't want to be sold to. Do not pitch people on LinkedIn. They are there for networking. They are there to learn and be educated. So if you are in LinkedIn, purely do educational posts. No one wants to hear your pitch. Educate people on what you're doing. If you're doing Medicare insurance, explain what it is. Explain why is it important. Explain what happens if you need it and you don't have it. None of those are sales pitches. It's pure education. You can do those on posts, and they also have LinkedIn articles. Now, here's one of the big differences between the two. LinkedIn articles are longer and they're stickier. They last longer than a post that just kind of shows up and goes away. And also, they'll be found on Google. Your LinkedIn posts will not. Your LinkedIn articles can be found on Google as well. So when using LinkedIn, remember it's pure business to business. Don't try to sell anyone anything. You're there to educate them. If they're interested in your product, they'll reach out to you.
Good advice. We now have a question from James. What if I'm seeking an equity partner? Do I first need to appeal to profit potential, or can I draw someone in that believes in my vision and that I'm helping people? How do you determine prioritizing which pitch?
Well, primarily you want to work with people who want to work with you. So yeah, that's your buying persona is you at that point. So again, you're going to have your buying persona pitch, but it's not looking for sales. It's looking for someone to work with. And I do that too. That's Smith Douglas Associates. The associates are all my network, the people I surround myself with, my photographers and videographers and social media experts. I've got Beth for speakers. It's the people you surround yourself with. So I have a very different conversation with them than I do with people that may be a potential client. So that's something to work on too. And it's not so much prioritizing. It's again, it's a different buying persona. And it's depending on who they are and how they may be a part of you. So that's something to work on, is the different buying personas on whether this is a potential investor, a potential partner, or just someone who believes in what you're doing.
That's great. Actually, our next question is also around frameworks. Is there a framework, or sorry, is around personas. Is there a framework you would recommend for understanding the different personas you may have to engage?
It's one of those things that you know most of it at this point because you know what your potential customers and clients are. In fact, one of the things I ask potential partners is, what are your buying personas? Who are the people you love working with? Because I go to a lot of networking events. Again, real estate agents, I know about 50. One of the things I do is, who is your favorite kind of person to work with? Do you love working with first time buyers? Do you love working with people who are getting divorced? Do you love people who are downsizing? So I at least have a kind of a link to that when someone says, yeah, we need to sell the house. Mom wants to downsize. Can you recommend anyone? I'm going to immediately recommend the guy who loves working with downsizing people, even though honestly, any of the real estate agents can help with him. But it's almost like matchmaking. So one of the things you want to do is, when you're doing your personas, is, who are these people and why? You always have to think of the why. Why is someone like this going to buy a product or service from someone like me? And again, you have to get into the language they're speaking. So if you're only selling to kind of your own surrounding, if you're an engineer selling to other engineers, that's great. If you're an engineer selling to biologists, you're going to have to work on the language.
That's great. Again, we have like 1 or 2 minutes left here. If you have a final question, you could please type it in.
I did see someone ask about the new 30-second LinkedIn video. That is very cool. I just put mine up about 2 days ago. What it is now when you click on a LinkedIn headshot, you can now put a 30-second video behind there. Now, you can either record it directly from your phone, or, as I found out after experimenting for an hour or so, you can create a video on your computer, upload it to your phone, and then upload it to LinkedIn. But right now, the only way you can get it on LinkedIn is through the app on the phone. And so again, for that, that's going to be a general message. This is who I am. This is what I do. This is why you should care. Reach out for more information. Or if you're using LinkedIn to hit that one specific B2B target, use the buying persona there and create something with that.
Okay, great. We have one last question, time for a quick answer on how do you appeal to special personas on eBay?
Storytelling. That's how Significant Objects started that whole thing. You build a story around the persona. Again, people like us buy products like this. And you want people to feel like, oh, I'm buying from one of my tribe. This person gets me. So you'll see sports memorabilia. The way they write their stuff is very different from like antique cuckoo clocks. It's so you want to write what you're writing about in the language that your buying persona most resonates with.
That's great. Well, thanks. That's all the time we have for questions today. Merrill, I could ask you to put the last score slide up.
I
Again,
am doing that right now.
That would be great. Just as a reminder to everyone, the webinar has been recorded and it will be available on our website, fairfieldcounty.score.org, within the next couple of days. Our next live webinar will be Wednesday, July the 7th. That is not next Wednesday. I made a mistake when I was opening it up. And the topic is why good isn't good enough, with Diane Winston presenting. And again, if you'd like to take advantage of free individual counseling, you can use the you can use the bit.ly link that you see, or you could go to our website address that you see in yellow on the screen and click on the Request a Mentor link. If I could also ask you to please fill out your evaluations at the end of the webinar, that would help us greatly. And lastly, I would like to thank the Monroe Chamber of Commerce and the Edith Wheeler Memorial Library for their help in planning today's webinar. And on behalf of SCORE, thank you all for attending the live webinar, and a special thank you to Merrill for presenting today. So have a great day, everyone, and enjoy the rest of the day.